Over 360 TSA agents have quit their jobs in the midst of the continued partial government shutdown. The airport security shortages are causing massive delays and are a potential threat to smaller airports potentially being closed completely. That's according to the TSA. Joining us right now is Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. And Secretary Duffy, thank you for being with us today. You know, there are so many questions about what's happening, but as this drags out, I think the number one question is, are people who are flying today safe, or have we reached a point where there's actually a security threat?
Well, the reasons why we have such long lines is when we have, more TSA agents that call out than previous. It takes longer to get through TSA. So what that means is they're doing their job, right? They're screening all the necessary people, but it's just taking a longer period of time. So yes, it's safe, but when you're going to travel by yourself is one thing, but if you're traveling with kids, it just becomes very laborious. I mean, in places like Philadelphia, Chicago, Houston, lines that are 2, 3, 4 hours long make travel just grinding.
Yeah, I heard that over the weekend we hit call-outs north of 10%, maybe 10.9% or something, the highest we've seen. That's on the national level. Some places like Houston saw call-outs of over 50%. Is that the latest update you have, or do you have anything else you can fill us in on that front?
Yeah, so right now on average we're rolling about 10%, which is 5 times the normal call-out rate. But last weekend, on average, it was only double the average call-out rate. So what I'm seeing is it's getting worse day by day, and we have to think about the TSA worker. But these are not highly paid individuals. They start off at about $45,000 to $55,000, but living in in D.C., in Atlanta, in New York. They live in very expensive communities, so it's really challenging for them. And so I saw this with the FAA and our air traffic controllers. The TSA agents missed a partial payment. Last Friday, they missed a full payment. As we get into next week, Becky, and they're about to miss another payment, this is going to look like child's play, what's happening right now. You're going to see small airports, I believe, shut down. You're going to see extensive lines, and air travel is going to almost come to a grid halt, stop. And so, listen, the point is, we don't have to live this. Let's not use the American people as a political tool to get your will. We had a race in the last election about Joe Biden letting in 10, 12, 15 million people. Donald Trump ran and said, we're going to get those bad hombres out of the country. Democrats lost on that. Donald Trump's doing it, and Democrats are trying to redo the election and use the same policies that they lost on. Listen, let's actually get the bad people out. Let's Homeland Security. If there's a time to actually have Homeland Security up and operational, it would be a time like now when we're in a conflict with Iran. We've let, again, the 15 million people into the country that weren't vetted by Joe Biden. And it can be an incredible risk because we don't know who's here. We need Homeland Security now more than ever. Democrats should fund it and then say, hey, we want to have some modifications. By the way, the White House, Donald Trump, has been willing to work with Democrats, but just not give them everything they're asking for. But the president will make some concessions. He's a negotiator, and he's had that conversation. It just seems like they're in a place where they don't want to get to yes because their base, their radical base, doesn't want to fund Homeland Security, doesn't want to fund ICE. They want to keep all these individuals in the country.
But we know it's already funded till 2029, and I don't know where the messaging is being lost for Republicans. The messaging is being lost somehow, because it's very clear this isn't that different than the last government shutdown. When you lose an election, when you have some type of leverage, even if the Democrats would pillory the Republicans if they tried to pull the same thing when they were on the outs, they'd pillory them. I just don't understand how it isn't clear that this is fully in the Democrats' lap right now. These lines, TSA people not getting paid, everything else, it should be very, very clear. I don't know why it's not hitting home where they're not saying, okay, you're right, Uncle. We cannot let this happen to the TSA and to all these travelers. We'll work on the DHS in the way that it's supposed to be done at some future point. But this is unacceptable. And why can't Republicans just spell that out?
Well,
Secretary?
I think there's a lot of mouthpieces in the media that will tell a different story, right? And it's hard to push back against that narrative. But if we're honest, what's really happening? Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House. But Democrats in the Senate have the ability to shut down Republican movements because of the filibuster rule, right? You need 60 votes to pass a bill. And because Democrats don't get to yes, that bill won't pass, right? If we get into the weeds of how politics works, but then Democrats sit back and go, listen, we're not in the majority. We can't do anything about this. It's Republicans' fault. Well, then that begs the question, do we get rid of the filibuster rule so we can pass good legislation? Because to your point, Joe, every single Republican is voting to fund Homeland Security, make sure these TSA lines go away. And every Democrat is voting to keep it shut down and make sure you have mass chaos in your airport. So it's very simple, and how anyone in the media could say something different about what's happening, I think, is frustrating. But Republicans have to be better, and I think continue to message why this is happening and that Democrats are using the American people and inflicting pain on the American people for what they think is a political benefit. And I think the way this ends is people get hurt, right? Which is horrible. You don't want, your job is to protect the American people.
Right? Well, no, Secretary, you're talking about the TSA agents who aren't getting paid? Not TSA agents. Or you mean you think that there's going to be a security accident, threat, risk that takes place as a result?
So Senator Slotkin in Michigan was voting to not fund Homeland Security until there was an attack on a synagogue. And little children almost lost their lives because a radical wanted to come in and shoot them because they were Jewish. And after that happened, she decided, oh, maybe I do now want to fund TSA and Homeland Security. So that's what I mean. When we don't know 15 million people who are in the country, we haven't vetted them, and we're in a conflict with Iran, there is a heightened risk. And can bad things happen if you don't fund Homeland Security? They can. I think every single American would say, let's make sure the American people are safe. That's more important than your political fight in Washington, whether it's Senator Slotkin in Michigan or any other Democrat across the country. So I'm not saying TSA or air travel. I'm saying radical elements that have been led into this country by Joe Biden that Donald Trump wants to get out. That is my concern right now.
Just cutting through the politics here, we had Jay Johnson on with us last week. He was in charge of the Department of Homeland Security under President Obama. He came on to talk about how neither side should be allowed to hijack this. Same concerns, same issues, worries about security. Is there a bipartisan solution that gets to the heart of this not being the tool that the Democrats right now are using, that the Republicans have used in the past when they were the minority party? Is there a way to say, we're not going to play that game? This is not going to be a tool that anybody can use when they throw a political temper tantrum.
Yeah, Congress likes using whatever tools they have in the toolkit to get leverage. But, Jay Johnson should recognize the importance of Homeland Security and the fact that we should not take that away from the American people.
He did.
And
I thought he did.
Which is important, And but then he should also then go the next step to even say, well, Democrats should then fund it, right?
He did.
But Becky,
he basically came out and said that this should never happen, no matter who's in charge and no matter who's in the minority party. That's what I mean. Is there a way to say that we should not be? This is what, the third time that TSA agents have been asked to go without pay in the last year?
That's right. Well, I think the real issue here is but Democrats, what they really want is they want TSA agents to take their masks off, right? TSA agents don't want to wear masks. And by the way, Democrats spent a couple of years during COVID mandating that we all wear masks. Now they want TSA agents to take them off. Well, why is that? They want them to take their masks off so they can dox the TSA agents and not just go after the agent, but go after their spouses, go after their kids, and put political pressure, protest outside their homes. And that's untenable for a law enforcement agent who's just trying to do the good work of the American people, getting folks who broke our laws out of the country, enforcing our laws. And so, Democrats have suggested body cams. I think President Trump has said he's okay negotiating body cams and some other requirements that Democrats have asked for the agents. The president, who is a negotiator, is willing to compromise with them. But there's some things that go too far where we don't want to risk the lives of agents because radical Democrats want to attack them. And I think that's the fundamental point in disagreement right now between the Republicans and Democrats in the Congress.